All right, now this is the book we're going to be going over mission work among the Negroes and the Indians. What is being accomplished by means of the annual collection taken up for our missions. Now, as y'all see right here, 1916. Right here, Catholic Church Commission for Catholic Missions among Negroes and Indians. This has to do with the so-called African Americans and Indians of North America pertaining to the Catholic Church, okay, from the year 1916. So we're about to get into this archive. Now, before I get into this archive, I don't want to offend anyone. This has something to do with the Catholic Church, and I'm just teaching history, and I just find it interesting that this is basically proof that there were free melanated people in America even before the Civil War, which reached back to what I say your last name is your last name. But we're going to get back into that. And even after the Civil War was done, they were still doing this type of stuff in the background. All right. So even if you got freed, that doesn't mean that you didn't face any racial issues. Yes, these people became free through the Catholic Church, but they still went through issues. So let's get it. And this is also going to show there were melanated people coming here to conquer, so you want to stay to the end for this. Now, this picture is a real picture. This is the West Indian Creole Boys in uniform. That's what it's called. By Agostino Brunies. This is from 1770s to 1780s. Yes, these were melanated black Catholics that who converted over to Catholicism. Right? West Indian Creole Boys in uniform. Remember the name of that. On this page, an appeal in behalf of the Negro in the Indian missions in the United States. Dear brethren, once a year we appeal to you for funds to carry on the work of instructing and converting the Indian and Negro of our land, whilst deeply appreciating all that you have done in the past. We cannot refrain from expressing the hope that the needs of these missions will be more generously heeded by priests and people alike in the year 1916 than ever before. We mention the clergy for a special reason. Now, this is when the Spanish were freeing melanated people if they converted over to Catholicism. We're going to read the bottom right here. In 1693, Spain offers freedom to the slaves who convert to Catholicism. These freed slaves established a community northeast of St. Augustine in 1738 and lived there until 1763. Garcia Rio de Santa Teresa de Mose, or Fort Mose, becomes the first free black town in the U.S. Y'all see they have this in the same area. El Pueblo de Garcia Rio de Santa Teresa de Mose. I don't know if I'm saying it right because I don't speak Spanish. On the shore of Robinson Creek, 1/4 mile east of this marker, was the site of a Spanish mission for Indians left homeless during Queen Anne's War. Since 1688, Negro slaves from the English colonies had found refuge in the Spanish St. Augustine. On March 15, 1738, Governor Manuel de Montiano freed them in the name of the king, and later formed a village for them named Garcia Rail and Mose. Here the freedmen would cultivate the ground and learn the Catholic region. For their protection, a moated earthwork was erected called Fort Mose. So these were black people who converted over to Catholicism to be free or to get special treatment. This was the first black free town, first free black town in America, in the United States. So we're going to get to this part, slavery era, 1400s to 1867, right? Catholic Church and slavery in the colonial history of the United States. The Kingdom of Congo, 14th through 17th century, Catholic Church in Congo. The Portuguese appetite for African slaves quickly grew beyond the intentions or capacity of the Congolese people, leading to one Congo ruler going so far as to write the Portuguese king, John III, for assistance in stemming the tide of citizens being taken captive from his land. Many of these victims would eventually be brought to the Americas, and some scholars have suggested their common cultural heritage and shared faith led them to instigate at least one major rebellion in the colonial United States. All right. Now, this next section is important, so pay attention. Europe and North America, 1528 to 1803. The first African Catholic slaves that arrived in what would eventually become the United States primarily came during the period of the Spanish colonization. Esteban, an African Catholic enslaved by Spaniards, was among the first European groups to enter the region in 1528 via what would become Florida. He would go on to serve on various other North American expeditions. He was a Catholic enslaved by Spaniards, right? So let's look at who Esteban is. Estevanico, 1500s to 1539, also known as Mustafa Azamari and Esteban de Dorantes and Estevanico the Moor. The Moor. You see that, right? Was the first African and Arab person to explore North America, right? So a Moor was here in 1528, right? So watch this, right? So the Afro-Spanish, pay attention, the Afro-Spanish conquistador Juan Garrido entered Puerto Rico in 1509. What did he do? Helping to conquer it for the white Spanish settlers. So there was a technically a black man who was a conquistador helping conquer Puerto Rico with white Spanish settlers, which means what? There were black people who were conquering America, right? Let's see who he is. Juan Garrido. Juan Garrido, 1480 to 1550, was an Afro-Spaniard of Congo. Origin conquistador known as the first documented Bantu person in what would become the United States. Born in the Kingdom of Congo in West Central Africa, he went to Portugal as a young man and converting to Catholicism. So he was from Congo, and when he was young, he went to Portugal and he converted to Catholicism. He chose the Spanish name Juan Garrido, Handsome John. He is the first known free, what's that say? Free African to arrive in North America. Free African to arrive in North America. So that means there were black people who came to the United States free. So this whole slave narrative is a lie. And there were black people who were conquistadors. No, he wasn't a full European or anything like that. But my point is, it was a black man helping colonize America. Like I said, there were black people colonizing America. All right? And they came free. All right? It says right here, African Catholics, slaves, and free, right? Were also among the Spanish settlers who established the Mission Nombre de Dios in the mid 16th century in what is now St. Augustine, Florida, right? So what does that say? African Catholic slaves and free were also among the Spanish settlers. What is this? When did this happen? Right? So they came during this. The Catholic mission founded in 1587, right? So there were free Africans or so-called Africans, I mean to say, coming here in early 1500s, way before the Virginia or the English crown bought their slaves. All right, before they bought their 20 to 30 slaves, there were already slaves from the Spanish crown or free black people or black conquerors in America way before the English crown. All right. Now, people don't understand that when slaves would escape from the English crown, they would escape and go to the Spanish crown to become free. So they would have to convert over to Catholicism, right? Through coercion. All right. For this is a great example. The Spanish freed slaves who reached their territory if they converted to Catholicism. Most such freedmen settled at Garcia Real de Santa Teresa de Mos from Fort Mose, the first settlement of freed slaves in North America, right? This is soon after the newly established Spanish Florida territory was attracting numerous fugitive slaves from the 13 colonies. So they would go for freedom through Catholicism if they escaped the English crown. Now I'm going to show y'all when they ended this. Now the English crown were Protestants, right? Now they had their own type of conversion too. But this is when they ended it. It's called an act declaring that baptism of slaves doth not exempt them from bondage, 1667. This is a real act. This is it right here. Laws of Virginia. All right. Remember, Virginia was multiple states during colonial times. All right. And this is what it says. Whereas some doubts have arisen whether children that are slaves by birth and by the charity and piety of their owners, made partakers of blessed sacrament of baptism, should be virtue of their baptism be made free. It is enacted and declared by this grand assembly in the authority thereof that the conferring of baptism doth not alter the condition of the person as to his bondage or freedom. Right? So they're literally telling you on this act, Law of Virginia, right, that you cannot convert over for freedom or special treatment anymore. This is when the English crown or Virginia ended this. Now, this is literally on the Vatican website. Literally. They didn't end this until December 7th, 1965. So they were doing forced conversions, coercion until 1965. Now, we're going to get to a section where they're basically telling you they're ending this for forced coercion, basically. All right. The Vatican Council declares that the human person has a right to religious freedom. Hmm. This freedom means that all men are to be immune from coercion. They're literally telling you what they're doing. Coercion on the part of individuals or of social groups and of any human power in such wise that no one is to be forced to act in a manner contrary to his own beliefs. Hmm. Whether privately or publicly, whether alone or in association with others within due limits. So they're literally telling you They were using coercion and forced conversions to make people Catholic, African Americans, Black Americans, so-called Africans. Okay? Now, you can't argue with these two. These are real acts and on the actual Vatican archive website. And this picture right here is literally called Free Women of Color with Their Children and Servants in a Landscape by the same artist that who drew the last picture. Or the last painting, I mean. This is from 1770s to 1780s. You can find these in the Barbados Museum and the British Library. All right. So these are real paintings of free people who converted over Catholicism. As you see, those men in the back have the same outfits on as the last picture. All right. So this whole slave narrative where everybody was a slave or there were no free black people or there were no black people who came here free is a lie. Now, I remember years ago I found this interesting. Right now we're on the Wall Street Journal, right? Right here, the Vatican apologizes for the church's historical role in justifying European colonialism. Y'all see that? So the Vatican apologizes for it and admits it. Rome, the Vatican apologized for the Catholic Church's historical role in justifying colonialism by European powers in other parts of the world and criticized pronouncements by past popes that authorized the seizure of indigenous peoples' lands. So they're telling you they apologize. This is on Wall Street Journal. I remember seeing this on the news a while ago. Now, this is the financial statements. This was published in 1916, but a lot of this stuff is before then. Okay. So this put me down a rabbit hole that I went down. So this is the receipts of them spending into doing this, basically converting people over and coercion by schooling and forced conversions, right? They putting down how many states, how much they putting into each state, and then you go down here. Let's see. All of these are statements. This is showing how much they put into all of this. Y'all see? So that part. And this page, I know it probably looks weird, but this shows the conversions going on. It has the population of the places. It says Alexandria, 300,000. Catholic Negroes, 6,000, right? They got four churches. So it goes down all to all these different states and how many basically what they call Negroes at that time they converted. Right here, Catholic Negroes. Right here too. They got Alaska and all of that. It's probably weird because it's sideways. That's how it downloaded. And then they got right here Indian population. And a lot of these people lost their identity during this also. So these were forced conversions that they were doing, coercion. Now this is such a long book that I'm going to make a part two for this. But basically y'all get a drift. This was them converting over black people to Catholicism and they're showing how much they're spending into this to put money into schools and projects to basically indoctrinate them. I'm not saying indoctrinate them with Catholicism, but I mean, whatever you want to say it is, but they're doing something.